Boker Tov. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. Good morning, 9:30 Thursday morning, and it's a great zechut, it's a great blessing from Hashem that I'm able to learn here together with you, and wherever you are in Yerushalayim, in Israel, and around the world. Thank you very much to Mordechai and Raya for broadcasting this special shiur, and we're going to continue the Mishna that we did yesterday, Perek Aleph in Pirkei Avot. Chapter 1, Mishna 6, and Bezrat Hashem next week we'll continue with Mishna Zayin. We learned yesterday about the three statements from Rabbi Yisroel ben Pirkei. Number 1, you should have a mentor, a spiritual mentor. Number 2, Knei lecha chaver, you should acquire for yourself a friend. And number 3, v'havedan et kol adam l'kav zchut, you should judge everyone meritoriously. And so, I want to start off with a story. The story is from the great Rabbi of Gur, the Beit Yisroel. He passed away in the middle of the 70s. Very, very sharp man, and the great Rabbi of Gur, right here in Eretz Yisrael. So he had a chassid once that went on business to Germany. Before he went, he asked the Rebbe for a bracha for his travels and for his business. And the Rebbe said, please buy me a special type of cigarettes in Germany. So the chassid went on his way, and he went to Germany, and he did his businesses. And on his way back, on the flight back, he realized, oy vavoy, I forgot to buy cigarettes for my Rebbe. So he was in the duty-free on the way back. Somewhere he found those cigarettes, and he brought his Rebbe, the Beit Yisroel, he brought him the cigars. Then his Rebbe said, where did you buy them? So he says, Rebbe, I'll tell you the truth. I forgot to buy it in Germany, so I bought them here when I came back. So the Beit Yisroel says, what did you think? You really thought I need to have these special cigars from Germany? I wanted that even when you're in Germany, you should remember that you have a Rebbe. The concept of having a spiritual mentor is not only to teach someone halachic issues or a certain Mishna or a certain part of Chassidut. It's guiding a person and accompanying a person, even in their day-to-day matters, even when they're doing business and they're not involved with Torah and mitzvahs and davening per se. Even when he wasn't doing business, the Rebbe wanted him to remember, true, you're on a trip, but you have a Rebbe, and you should do business properly, you should daven properly, even when you're on business. Because when a person deals with an issue, and on a daily matter, everyone has issues, queries, what to do, how to do. So it's very possible that we can make decisions based on what's good for ourselves. Because we're human beings, and we tend to be very egocentric. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a fact. So when we have a mentor, a spiritual mentor, then Bezrat Hashem, we stay in line. And we end up making better decisions, not necessarily what's good for ourselves, but mainly what's good for the issue, for Hashem. The proper decisions in Avodat Hashem, in the service of Hashem. And this is interesting that it's connected to the life story of Rabbi Yisroel ben Pirkei himself. He's the one who said this. Very often the Rebbe connects the statement with the individual who said it, as we'll see hopefully in the course of Pirkei Avot. That Rabbi Yisroel ben Pirkei, before he became the Nasi, before he became the leader of Am Yisrael, becoming a leader was totally out of the question for him. he would say, the Talmud says, he would say, I would staunchly, someone would tell me to be the leader of Am Yisrael, I would staunchly oppose it. But now, after he became the leader of Am Yisrael, then it was the opposite. Then he said, I'm not going down. Not that anybody suggested it, but he realized the importance of leadership. Aseh l'charav. He realized that when a person has a leader, a guide, a spiritual mentor, then when someone has a spiritual mentor, then that is really the key for success for that individual. Now I want to go on to the next part of the Mishnah. The next statement. You should acquire for yourself a friend. One of the son of one of the Hasidim of the previous generation, around 40, 50 years ago, unfortunately went off the way of Yiddishkeit. So his father went into Yechidut, a private audience by the Rabbi, and he broke down crying on the spiritual level, the spiritual situation of his son. And he told the Rebbe that he brings different rabbis and spiritual mentors to speak with the son, but nothing is helping. So the Rebbe said, in these scenarios, it's better to get one of his friends to have a good relationship with him, even more than his rabbis. That's exactly what his father did. His father got in touch with one of his friends to have a good, positive effect on his son. And just from the fact that he had someone who he was able to relate to, he was able to come back to the way of keeping Torah and mitzvot. So really, the difference between the effect that a teacher or a mentor can have and the effect that a friend can have are two different types of ideas. We see that even in the Parsha of Shoftim, we have judges and police that enforce the law, enforce Jewish law. That's their mission. But when Mashiach comes, it says in the Navi, "Va'ashiva shoftayach kevorishona, v'yoatzayach kevatchila." Hashem says, "I will return your judges as in the beginning, and yoatzayach, your advisors, kevatchila, as in the beginning." How does the advisors come in? Didn't we say in the Torah about the police enforcing the law? And the answer is that there are two ways, generally speaking, how to positively affect a person. Either mentors, judges, teachers, rabbis, police, or advisors. If it's the police or the judges or the teachers, that's from above. But if you have the advisor is there to hold your hand. And that's the difference. Before Mashiach comes, we need to have, they're both good. Both if you have an inspiration from above, and both if you have a friendly inspiration, they're both important. Usually under regular circumstances, someone from above tells you what to do, and you listen. Because that's how we're supposed to do. We're supposed to listen to what we're told. Hashem told in Torah through Moshe Rabbeinu, and the rabbis of every generation encourage us and teach us what to do. But sometimes it may not be enough. Sometimes you may need to have a pal, a friend, someone that's more on the level of the individual, instead of having a stick to enforce the law. We need to have someone who is on the level of the individual who's having this difficulty. And then it has a greater effect. And that's the difference between Aseh l'charav and Knei l'chachaver. They're both important. But we have to see in every scenario what is the best way that we can have a positive effect. Can we have a positive effect through just telling a person what to do? For many people, that's enough. What's up? For many people, that's enough. But for some people, they need to have a loving hand. They need to have an embrace. And many times, that's all a person needs. The person needs a hug and an embrace. And then a person comes around. Just this Shabbos, when we spoke about the tragedy that happened in Lag BaOmer this past Friday. So I told over a story that happened over here, and this story can be told 100 times a day. About 8.5 years ago, when a very generous donor donated a Sefer Torah, a brand new Torah to Chabad of Rechavia, we had a beautiful, very wonderful celebration. So, I used to live in Arlazarov, and the donor lived a couple doors away. So I had arranged all of the procession and the chuppah and the music. Everything was in place. And the police had told us, the police that were going to accompany us, they told us that we have to have volunteers to block the traffic with a special neon fluorescent yellow vest. So it came time, we finished the Torah, excuse me, we did the Hagbah, everyone's ready to go, and there was one police guy there, and he says to me, so where are the vests? I said, we have the volunteers here. Yeah, but where are the vests? I said, I'm sorry, I didn't get them, but it's almost irrelevant because we have the people that are going to be responsible for the safety of our community. He said, you're not going anywhere without the vest. So just picture it to your mind, over 500 people, they're waiting outside in the street. We're about to go on the procession of bringing the Torah for the first time into the home of Chabad of Rechavia. And I have to run home to our storage and start looking in the dark for these vests. I don't remember if I found them, but after 5 or 7 minutes, I came back. And I see that the procession had begun. So I said, what had happened? And someone explained to me that one of the leading rabbis, his name is Rabbi Bograv, one of the leading Chabad rabbis here in Yerushalayim, he had been there at the time. And he walked over to the police officer and he gave him a hug. He said, you're such a good person. Please let us go begin the procession. And he said, okay, that's fine. That's all the police officer needed. He just needed to have an embrace. He needed someone to feel that appreciates him and values him for the effort that he does over here in Yerushalayim. Now let's move on to the last part of the Mishnah, which is the Hedei Dan et Kol Ha'adam L'Kaf Zchut. We should judge every person favorably. Can anyone please explain to me, why should we judge someone favorably? If we see that a person did something no good, so why should we judge them favorably? They did something which was not good. So why in the world should we judge someone favorably? The best way to begin this explaining this point is by telling a short story from Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. He was the classical advocate for Yisroel. One time, middle of Yom Kippur, unfortunately, he saw the most horrific thing. He saw a Jew smoking on Yom Kippur. So he said to him, Rabbi, my dear friend, do you know that today is Yom Kippur? So he said to him, yes, I know. So the Rabbi said to him, do you know that it's forbidden to smoke on Yom Kippur? So the Jew said, yes, I also know that. So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak had to find some kind of limud zchut, finding a merit for this Jew. So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak lifted his hand to Hashem, to the heavens, and said, Master of the universe, look how wonderful your Yisroel is. Even a Jew that smokes on Yom Kippur, he says the truth and doesn't lie. In other words, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak was always able to find something good in every person. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak was exceptional beyond any imagination. But how can we really bring ourselves to judge someone favorably? And why is it so important? So we should look later on in the Pirkei Avot, in a couple of places, there are some statements which help us come to that level. Because as human beings, it's hard. We're human beings. We see a person did something. We don't know what's going on in their mind. So how should we judge the person favorably? We ourselves saw that person did something which is straight out against Hashem's will. So this is what the Alter Rebbe says in the Tanya. He quotes a few statements from different parts of Pirkei Avot. The Hevei Shefal Ruach B'fnei Kol Ha'adam. You should be humbled spirit, in front of every person. And the Rebbe explains in the letter, not only in front of a Jew, but also in front of every Gentile. Every single person, we have to be humble. And as we see also in Pirkei Avot later on, do not judge your friends until you reach their place. Because it's very possible, the Alter Rebbe says, that person has tests that no one else can imagine. So who are we to judge that person? In other words, we have to try to put ourselves in that person's situation. If we were in that person's situation, would we stand by that test? Who knows? Maybe yes, maybe not. What is the purpose of us finding favor in what the person said, what the person did? And when we realize that a Jew on his own, without considering the fact that he's in this world and all kinds of temptations, just a Jew, just a neshama, or if you put him on an island, there's no way he would have done a sin. No way. The previous Rebbe would say a great statement. I'm going to say it in Yiddish, the exact statement, and I'll translate it. Ayid, niter will, und niter ken, sein abgerissen von der Kadosh Baruch Hu. A Jew does not want, and it's impossible for a Jew to be disconnected from Hashem. But we see that the person did a sin. The answer is, it's not him. It's him. But it's not him himself. It's not his real self. Because if he wasn't his real self, he would never do the sin. He would never commit the sin, God forbid. And here's a beautiful concept that the Rebbe says in the Sikha. He says, when one person finds favor, finds a merit in what the other Jew did, what are you basically doing? You're revealing within himself, within that person, the inner kochot, inner energy, hidden energy. And you're enabling him, you're empowering him to stand by the tests that he has. I just want to finish off with a story. Very powerful story. A few decades ago, there was a Jewish writer. by the name of Natan Yalinmor. After he passed away, in one of the Israeli newspapers was published a letter that he had written before he passed away. And the title was Regards from Hell. So the story is as follows. Natan Yalinmor, he fought for Eretz Yisroel before the establishment of the state. And after the state became established in 1948, he was part of the communist leftist party. And he would write in the newspaper many anti-religious articles which would ridicule anything which is connected to Torah and Mitzvah. One day, he came to New York, and he visited his friend, Gershon Ber Jacobson. You might know Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson or Rabbi Simon Jacobson. This is their father of blessed memory. He was the editor and the founder of the Allgemeiner Journal, the Yiddish newspaper. So, it was on Rosh Hashanah, and Natan Yalinmor stayed at Rabbi Jacobson's house. And so the Rebbe would give out wine. The Rebbe would give out wine after his Havdalah, after the end of the Chag. And so Rabbi Jacobson, Gershon Ber, said to Natan Yalinmor, please come and join me to receive a bracha and some wine from Kos Bracha from the Rebbe. In the beginning, Natan refused. And he said when it comes to 770, people will be very upset at him for how he writes against Yiddishkeit. But at the end, he realized that nothing is going to happen to him. No one's going to hurt him. He's not going to go through anything negative. So he said, okay, I'll come with you. They both stood together online to receive kosher bracha, some wine for bracha from the Rebbe. When it came his turn, he turned to the Rebbe and said, the Rebbe turned to him and said, thank you very much for your articles. So Natan asked the Rebbe, does the Rebbe agree with what I write? So the Rebbe said, if I would read only everything that I agreed to, I would almost not read anything. And he received the bracha from the Rebbe and a little bit of wine, and he continued going. Then the Rebbe turned to him again and said, Natan, what's with Torah and mitzvot? In other words, how can we start beginning to or continuing to keep Torah and mitzvot? So Natan answered the Rebbe, it's like the Rebbe of Berditchev. He meant to say that the Rebbe of Berditchev would certainly find for me merits why I don't observe Torah and mitzvot. So the Rebbe said, the Rebbe of Berditchev, his approach is good for someone else. It's not good for yourself. In other words, each person for ourselves, we have to do Torah and mitzvot as good as possible. When we see someone else that's not doing the proper thing, then finding a merit for them is appropriate. After they left, Gershon Ber asked Natan, which story were you referring to? And he said the story that I said earlier about the Jew that was smoking on Yom Kippur. But the Rebbe explained to him, and Gershon Ber helped to explain this concept, that for ourselves we have to keep on doing as much Torah and mitzvot as possible. 2 months passed, and Natan became very sick, unfortunately. He had a terrible poison in his blood, and he was hospitalized here in Israel. And I'm sorry, it was in New York. This was in New York. And he called Gershon Ber Jacobson to his bed, and he gave him a closed envelope. And he told him that he feels that this is the end of his life. He asked him not to open up the envelope until after he passes away. And after that, he should publicize this this letter as an article in the newspaper. And that's the article which I referred to in the beginning, regards from hell. In this article, Natan Yalin Moore explains how he felt that he is in a deep hole, spiritual darkness, where not only this was his approach to Judaism, but everyone in Israel, everyone hated him. That was his feeling. And he felt, and he writes in this article, how his soul goes up to heaven. Obviously, he wrote it before he passed away. But it was a vision of his, how his soul goes up to heaven. And they show him exactly where is hell. And he's in a deep, deep hole, dark with other evil people. And all of a sudden, there's a beacon of light which shines into Gehenna. It comes from a very, very high place, and it comes very, very low. And it lights up the whole area. And he tries to see, where is this coming from? And then he sees the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And then Natan continues. He finishes up the article. The Rebbe is the only Jew in the world that believed in me. He was able to ask an apikoros, a denier in the Torah, like me, what's with the Torah and mitzvot? Because the Rebbe believed in my neshama, and he is the pillar of light, which shone upon me and gave me light even in the lowest situations. And this is what the Mishna says: "V'havidan et kol ha'adam l'kaf zchut." You have to judge every person favorably, even someone who, almost as if the entire Jewish nation views the person negatively. We have to judge every single person favorably. Thank you so much for joining us for this truly special shir. I'm humbled with all of the insights that I'm able to read from the Rebbe and from others. And Bezrat Hashem, tomorrow morning, 9:30, we'll have Kabbalah Cafe. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, for Shabbat, we're looking forward to seeing everybody for Chazak Chazak V'nit Chazek. All the best. Have a great day.